Today we're going to talk about the 5 steps to build a multi-million-dollar insurance agency no matter what type of insurance products you sell. I went through a recent evaluation of my business and had it valued at an 8-figure amount. I've been building my personal agency since 2013. It's now 2023 at the filming of this video. And I say all this because I have been exactly where you're interested in being, and that is building an agency that's successful, that is very profitable, and is valued at a multi-million-dollar level. And what I'm going to go through here in this video is really giving you the 30,000 overview on what it takes to be successful, but also to give you some practical advice from the beginnings of your agency to the scaling of your agency so that you can do the things that are the right things to do that are profitable, but also avoid the pitfalls that so commonly take many aspiring agency owners out of the game before they really have a foothold on the business to be successful. My name is David Duford. I own Insurance Agency Builders channel. That's where you're at right now. I've been building my agency since 2013, and the purpose of this content is to freely give you my personal experience building an agency without any expectation of you joining my agency or doing business with me at all. I don't care about that. What I truly care about is helping you take your agency building efforts to the next level so you can help more agents out there be successful, teaching them what you know to elevate your business and then therefore turn around and help many people out with their insurance needs. So we're going to jump right into today's topic of the 5 steps that it takes to build a multi-million-dollar insurance agency in 5 years or less. And again, I say 5 years or less because it's taken me like 10 years, a little less than that to get there. But it's because I had to kind of figure things out. I'm an independent agency. I didn't have anybody instructing me or telling me what to do. I just kind of like tried things, figured out what works and what doesn't. And again, the purpose of this video is really, if anything, what to avoid in this process of building. So let's get into number 1. And this is a very first important steps. Again, sometimes the things we take for granted are the most important steps. So the first thing is you've got to have street cred in this business as an agent first before you can expect to build a successful agency. Again, as many of us know, there is a culture of recruiting people to recruit in this business, and it works for the people at the top of the food chain, but very commonly doesn't work for the people in the smack dab in the middle or lower, and that's probably going to be many of you in the audience. And the thing that you have to understand is why while agency building is a great business, it works wonderfully, you have to have some level of firsthand in the trenches experience for a number of reasons before I believe you should even bother thinking or building an agency. So let me give you a couple of reasons why first, just to reiterate this vastly important point. Number 1, if you don't know experientially how to run an insurance sales business model as an agent, how can you teach anybody to do it, right? I mean, think about it. If you went to learn how to do surgery from a doctor who just read how to do surgery in a book but never applied it, went through the experience of it, would you really trust that person to teach you the right ways to do surgery? Of course not. But the problem in this business of selling insurance is we have a whole litany of agencies who purport that is the way to do things. And while sure there are successes, there are far more many failures that didn't necessarily have to be failures if the proper steps were taken in the beginning to develop a sense of firsthand experience. So what am I saying? I'm saying that as you get started in this business, if you're brand new or you're just getting going and you're thinking about building, focus on selling first. Understand what it's like to see the people, to pick the phone up and sell, to set appointments, to door knock, to sit down with a client, to overcome objections. And the thing I can promise you is this: while it's not where you want to be in the moment, what it's going to do is build the foundation to ultimately jump to where you want to be because you have the firsthand experience. And the thing is, you don't even have to be the greatest in the world at the business. I was just a good agent. As a field agent selling final expense, I was never as good as many of the agents in my agency and those in other agencies that I admire. But the difference is that I knew enough about the business, more so than the brand new guy, so I could convey to that agent how to sell, how to prospect, what leads to buy, not from just what I was told, but from firsthand experience. So the moral of the story here is that you got to know the business if you expect to, number 1, be successful, to eventually duplicate and scale your systems, because it's based off of not theory, but actual applied knowledge. And the other thing too, just some side notes too, is that it helps you keep better agents. I tend to think that, as we'll talk about in future videos, there are agents out there, we all want them, the studs, the guys and gals that write business. They don't really need to be serviced that much, just, you know, a phone call here and there, help them out, and they're out there working. We love those agents. Those are few and far between. And the thing is, those agents can tell if you don't know what you're doing, they're not going to respect you, they're not going to work with you longer, they're going to find the pros in the business to do with. So part of, I believe, your ability to sell first and focus on that is going to have an exponential effect, not just on how you systemize yourself, but keeping the very best of your agents too, because you can speak from firsthand experience, not theory, and every single fantastic, great agent appreciates applied experience, not theory. So that's step one. And I would say, how long should you do that for? 6, 12 months is what I would say. It took me about 2 years, but again, I'm kind of figuring this out. I had to go through the mental gymnastics of being like, well, I failed out of the business after 12 months. Would people really train with me? And they did. And the flip side of that is I knew what it was like to fail, so I knew what to avoid, and that counts for something in the training process, as well as having some success too. But I believe if you've done pretty well, you know, you're in the top 20%, 10 to 20% is fine, somewhere in that area or above, and you've been doing that consistently for a year, and you're approaching this idea of building an agency, I think personally you're ready to go, and you should apply and take the next steps to start building out the business model. So the second step to building a multi-million-dollar agency is define what your USP is. So let me explain to you what a USP is and why it matters, and give you some examples, because the thing with insurance sales is it's becoming a saturated market. I started in 2011. It was saturated to an extent then, but with the advent of getting out of the Great Recession, when Trump got into office, the economy took off, really was taken off throughout all the other time, recovering from the Great Recession. But things really started to pick up in the insurance recruiting business. And now, fast forward in 2023, as I film this, there are way more insurance agents, and there's way more competition. And anytime there's more competition in any business, you have to think closely and considerably about how you want to present yourself to your prospects and be able to differentiate yourself and put yourself in a position to say, hey, this is why you should join me because of XYZ. So USP means unique selling proposition. In a nutshell, it's what you would tell your prospect, in this case, your agent thinking about joining, as to why they should join you versus other alternatives. Now, in the recruiting game, it could be another job, it could be another industry. So you've got to develop a USP that differentiates yourself, like, hey, you should join the insurance business because it has the highest level of multimillionaires, you can work from home, you can do this and that. These are general like benefits of the business, but you have to even go deeper with that USP process and be able to differentiate yourself further. Because the truth is, if somebody is looking in the insurance business nowadays, they're also looking at one, maybe two other agencies and highly considering those as options to join as well. So how do we further delineate our USP? The first thing is think about what it is that you sell and how you sell. So these are the two components that I think make the biggest difference and will help you, again, contrast what you do versus the other. So I'll start off with my insurance agency's differentiation points, and maybe that will help clarify what I mean. So when somebody asks me, hey, David, why should somebody join DeFord Insurance Group? What I'll simply tell them is this. Number one, we're the best in class when it comes to one-on-one mentorship and training and final expense face-to-face and telesales. So in that one sentence, I can compartmentalize what sets us apart and why agents should join. So for example, again, to clarify, at DeFord Insurance Group, we're all about training and mentorship on a one-on-one basis. Nobody else in the business, to the extent that we go, does one-on-one mentorship. It's almost non-existent. So if an agent values training, support, a mentor-type approach to this very difficult business with a high failure rate, they're going to see that our proclamation sets aside differently, and I think more powerfully than the others out there. The other level is what we sell, and we're selling final expense life insurance either face-to-face or telesales. So we've gone a step further and quantified what products we're selling and how we're selling. So if the person's interested in remote sales from home, we have an avenue to help them out. If they are fine going into the field, the classical way to sell insurance, then the face-to-face model is something that can suit them too. So this is how our USP works. It helps contrast us against our competition, of which there is many in this business that are much bigger, have much larger marketing budgets, and we're able to carve out a really good section of the business model that appreciates training and selling these simple products, whether remotely or face-to-face. So all of this is to say, you've got to do that kind of thinking as well. And I can't stress enough about how well you defined your USP is going to really make it or break it for you, okay? And my advice to you is take your USP not on high contracts, but maybe on training or support or your fantastic lead programs or the product that you're selling or the training program, etc. There's always a market for a value proposition as opposed to a contract proposition. So a common mistake new agency owners take is they think the only way they can attract good talent is with commission levels. That's not true. Commissions are something that matter, but not as much as the other components. I've actually lowered commissions for new agents joining the Ford Insurance Group in recent months without a single word of the new agents coming in and complaining, because our value proposition more than makes up for it, because now we offer one-on-one mentorship. So long story short, make sure that you develop a USP and think through it. A couple of things I'll throw out there that are really popular. Anything sold over the phone and anything that's sold remotely, you're jumping on top of a trend, right? That everybody has an interest in doing that. Nobody wants to go back to the office anymore since the advent of COVID and the lockdowns. So remote work is very appealing. And then also I think free lead programs are another thing too as well. If you can have a program where you can show an agent, hey, all you got to do is make phone calls and you're going to make money and you don't have to buy leads and you can sit at home, like there's the combination of those two, and you can do that. You're going to have a hungry, starving audience that's going to want to talk to you. So there's some ideas that may or may not be appropriate for you, but those are some examples of some niches that definitely are working in the current year. So number 3 on the list here is the systemize your process. So this is very important. So once you've developed an audience of who you, or a USP of what it is that you do, why people should care, and what sets you apart, why agents should join and why they shouldn't join, the next thing is to kind of look at your own process, because it's very likely that the process that you're doing right now is going to greatly resemble your USP. It's very rare that somebody comes into this business and they're selling Medicare Advantage and then they shift to building an agency around annuity sales. I'm sure it happens, but it's in the minority. Most of the time, what we sold and are successful at, we are now building our agency around that concept. Makes sense, right? So therefore, that's why if you're going that route, which you most likely will, you should work on systemizing what it is that you're doing and putting it into a process that is more digestible for the brand new agent. The thing that we tend to forget as agency owners who are now responsible for somebody other than ourselves is how we learned how to sell is going to be a little bit different compared to what the other guy is learning in order to learn how to sell. So you can't just put them in your seat and do them for a ride along for the vast majority of them, even though that's a good thing to do, or just have them on a Zoom call and listen to your sales presentation or whatever it is that you do or thinking. You've got to break down the learning process into a systematic approach. So what we do, for example, at the Ford Insurance Group, when I was building the company earlier on, of course, the first thing that people are concerned with is what do I say in front of a client and how do I navigate the options for coverage? So I put together a script. I took what I said, I put it in writing, I broke it down into modules to explain to them what was being said and why we were saying it. I think reinforcing the training with the why is really important. It helps kind of further understanding and knowledge and confidence in what it is that they're doing and why it's important. We also took the carrier training and the underwriting training, created a cheat sheet. So whenever clients, of course, agents are going to have questions about, hey, which company is going to cover COPD, they have a resource now that they can use without my interaction, which is, again, another thing we'll talk about at length, about how to remove yourself as the bottleneck from your system. They can go to that cheat sheet, look for the options, and right there and then confidently offer a product to the client, which means more likely than not, more agents are going to write more business and more of that business is going to stick because it was appropriately underwritten and they had the correct carrier to use it with. So all this is to say you cannot take for granted the training process and the systemization and the breakdown of what it is that you do and imbuing that into a system of learning, okay? The more that you can do that, I believe personally, the better success you're going to have. There's always going to be people who are successful no matter what their situation is. Then there's a ton of people that no matter what it is that you do, even the best system in the world, you can't help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. But there's a position in the middle of agents who would thrive and do some level of success if they had a more systematic approach that allowed them to learn and different ways to understand the material. So don't take that process for granted. Make sure that you're coming up with a process to systemize your business and to get you in a position where you can explain what it is that you do without a high level of confusion. And you can put somebody in the process of learning your craft and what it is that you've garnered through these year plus of experience selling whatever products you're selling. Number 4 is finding and exploiting your niche. So again, we're getting now to the process of, well, I've got a system, I've got a USP. How do I find agents to work for me? So I'm going to go through a couple of different options here very briefly. As we get into more of the content on this channel, I'm going to do a much more deeper dive on each of these, because all of these I'm about to hit on deserve a video in and of itself, and we're definitely going to talk about all of them. But I'm going to give you some high notes because there's different ways that definitely work to attract agents in. So first of all, you can have what I would call a target of an affinity group. So an affinity group is very simple. Think of your life, the hobbies that you do, or the work that you've experienced. You likely have some kind of connection to an affinity group through one of those different avenues. So for example, for me, I love jiu-jitsu. At the filming of this video, I'm a purple belt. If my arm wasn't jacked up, I'd probably be doing jiu-jitsu right now instead of filming this video. I understand what it's like to do jiu-jitsu, I understand the culture, I understand the hard work that it takes to be successful, the kind of mental mindset issues that we run into, and I also just understand those people. So if I were to, therefore, go after recruiting people who are unlicensed, but I had a connection with, I would consider targeting the jiu-jitsu population. Now, it sounds kind of strange. Well, how do I do that? Well, there's different ways you can do it. One of the most common ways is to do cold outbound processes. You can send people DMs on Instagram, send people DMs on LinkedIn, people that have indicated their interest in jiu-jitsu. It's something you can find by going into these social platforms and kind of looking it up and doing a cold approach. Hey, notice you do jiu-jitsu. I'm a purple belt. The reason I'm reaching out to you is because we have a great opportunity in the financial and insurance sales space where there's a potential to make 6 figures. Can I show you some more information on how it would work? And yeah, you probably say, well, geez, how many people are going to answer that? Not many, but it is a cold approach, and it just is time under tension. It just takes time and many messages to find maybe a handful of interested prospects where the timing's perfect. But the cool thing is that with that affinity group, you kind of have a common interest, so that level of trust that otherwise wouldn't be there is, and you can have a much faster ability to make a connection with them. So that's one way that can work. Another way is you can target licensed agents. There's boundless ways to do that. You can do the cold approach like I just described. You can also do email marketing. You can also do cold calls as well. All this stuff is still being done in 2023. And you've got to make a decision, and my advice here is to make your decision on one type of approach over another. It's very hard to kind of juggle multiple different strategies at the same time. Like, for example, what I do at the Ford Insurance Group, we predominantly target an organic social media approach. I highly recommend it. We'll be talking about that on future videos. It just takes a lot of time, especially now. When I started in 2014, different market than it is in 2023. It still works wonderfully well if you give great content without expectation of anything in return, but it takes time. So it's something that if you're not, like aggressive and you're patient, it's wonderful. But it is something that is just a matter of time. But that works really great. That's what I do predominantly. That's where we get most of our agents from. We do a lot of referral work now as well, because I've been in the business for years now, and that's, again, another issue altogether. Long story short, though, pick the thing or strategy that really appeals to you the most, and then go all into it. And then step number 5 is scale and grow. So with all of these methods, what you want to do is once you find something that works, once you start getting some traction, it is the beginning to process to start to scale that activity higher. Even if you're doing something like cold outbound to an affinity group, you can scale that higher. You can start with maybe 50 DMs a day, then scale it to several hundred a day. Maybe you try different affinity groups, but the overall strategy remains the same. And then you outsource that outbound cold approach methodology maybe to a VA in the Philippines at an affordable rate. So the point is you want to figure out, first of all, the first step is figuring out what works for you and then scaling it from there. So again, for example, with YouTube, I started putting content out consistently. Took me a year or two to get traction, but then I started noticing, hey, a lot of people are coming from this. And so my response was, well, hey, if it works this good, why don't I do more? And I was doing maybe 3, maybe 4 videos at most. There were times, and I went months without putting content out there. But once it was clear it was working, I was like, I got to do this daily. And there have been times, and really right now, we're even doing 14 pieces of content a week now. And we get tons of views from it because it works. Because we got to get our message out there, and if it works, do more of it is really the solution. But you got to test out different strategies at first to see what's working for you, fine-tune them, throw away what doesn't work, but the winners you want to let ride and then scale to the moon. And that is the idea of how to scale your business so that you start getting results. And the last little bit of message is starting to get dark in here because it's raining outside, is part of the growth process too, is you got to be prepared for the next step. I know most of us are like, well, how do I just get agents to notice me, right? How can I recruit anybody with a pulse? Well, we want to change that mindset, and we'll talk more about that in future content. But the thing is you got to prepare to scale. And one of the things that I would recommend is as you start to grow, you're going to be less capable of handling everything. As a solopreneur in the insurance business, really until late 2022, I can tell you all you will do if you don't hire or put into people into your downline to be responsible for certain things, you're going to be overwhelmed and working 80+ hours a week, sure, making a lot of money, but never really having the time to really enjoy the business working for you instead of you working for it. So you want to start thinking as you start recruiting people who are successful, how can you duplicate what you are doing training and recruiting into other team members, be they VAs to do cold approach, agents who love training to put them in training roles, maybe pay them in leads or pay them an override. Lots of different ways to do that. But you need to be thinking about how to grow yourself out of doing everything. If there's a big mistake I made, it was trying to be in control of everything because I'm really good at what I do. But there's a consequence to that. It's a consequence of time, lifestyle, and all the things that really the purpose of your business really should be doing, which is paying and running that for you so you can afford to enjoy all of those things, a great income, lifestyle, etc. So again, think with the end in mind as you begin to scale and grow. Who can you start selecting? Where can you start going to duplicate yourself so that you can enjoy your business, not just be run by it? So I hope you enjoyed this video on the 5 steps that it takes to become a multimillionaire insurance agency owner within 5 years or less. We're going to have a lot more great content just like this. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Again, I'm not selling anything. The purpose of this is just to help you build your agency no matter what agency you're with. If you have any questions, comments, leave them below. And thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care.